As the world warms, the ice is giving up its secrets. Bodies preserved for thousands of years. Aircraft lost since the World Wars. Diseases that have not infected a human in living memory. What is emerging from melting glaciers and permafrost is rewriting archaeology, biology, and the history of war, counting down the 10 strangest things ever recovered from glacial ice. Number 10. Caches of First World War weaponry from the Italian Alps. During the First World War, Italian and Austro-Hungarian forces fought along the high-altitude Alpine front for over 3 years, including the brutal so-called White War on the Adamello and Marmolada glaciers. As Alpine glaciers have retreated in recent decades, an extraordinary volume of period weaponry has emerged from the ice. Recovered items have included intact rifles, unfired ammunition, hand grenades, mortar shells, bunker structures, soldiers' letters still legible inside leather pouches, wooden boots, and full uniforms. Italian Alpine recovery teams continue to find unexploded ordnance every summer that still poses an active hazard. In some cases, perfectly preserved soldiers' bodies have emerged alongside the gear, identifiable by name tags or letters in their pockets. The Adamello-Presanello Range and the Stelvio National Park have become open-air World War I archaeological sites, with entire frozen field hospitals and trench networks, now exposed for the first time in over a century. Number 9. The Lenbreen Mountain Pass artifacts. In 2011, archaeologists working in Norway's Jotunheimen Mountains began systematic surveys of the Lenbreen ice patch as it retreated. What they found over the following decade rewrote the understanding of Viking-era and medieval trade routes. Recoveries from Lenbreen have included a fully preserved Iron Age woolen tunic dating to roughly 300 AD, leather shoes from the Viking era, horseshoes, sleds, wooden walking sticks with carved runes, mittens, arrows complete with feathered fletching, and even the bones of pack horses. Carbon dating has shown the pass was in active continuous use from approximately 200 AD to 1500 AD before being abandoned as climate cooled. The site is considered one of the most important ice-related archaeological discoveries in Europe in the past 50 years. More than 2,000 individual artifacts have been catalogued so far. Each summer of glacial retreat exposes more. Number 8. The Lost Squadron of Greenland. On the 15th of July, 1942, 6 P-38 Lightning fighters and 2 B-17 Flying Fortress bombers were forced to make emergency landings on the Greenland ice cap during a ferry mission to England. All crew members were rescued. The aircraft were abandoned in place. The Greenland ice cap proceeded to bury them. In 1992, 50 years after the original landings, an expedition team located one of the P-38 seconds, a fighter that came to be known as Glacier Girl. The aircraft was discovered under approximately 260 feet of accumulated ice. The recovery team melted a vertical shaft straight down to the aircraft, disassembled it piece by piece inside the ice cavern, and brought it to the surface in fragments. Glacier Girl was painstakingly restored over a decade by a private team in Kentucky and flew again in October 2002, 60 years after its emergency landing. At least one of the other P-38 seconds and one of the B-17 seconds remain buried under the Greenland ice and have been the subject of additional recovery efforts. Number 7. The Cerro Lulailaco Mummies. In 1999, an expedition led by archaeologist Johan Reinhard climbed to the summit of Cerro Lulailaco, a 739-meter volcano on the Argentine-Chilean border. Just below the summit at over 22,000 feet of elevation, they discovered 3 perfectly preserved bodies of children frozen into the permafrost-like volcanic soil. The children, 2 girls aged approximately 6 and 15, and 1 boy aged about 7, had been ritually sacrificed by the Inca civilization approximately 500 years ago in a ceremony called Capacocha. The combination of altitude, cold, and dry climate had preserved their bodies in extraordinary condition. The 15-year-old, dubbed the Maiden, still had visible eyelashes, internal organs, blood in her heart and lungs, and even food residue in her stomach. Forensic analysis showed she had been drugged with alcohol and coca leaves before death. Scans showed her brain tissue was so well preserved that the neuronal structures could be examined microscopically. The Lulailaco mummies are considered the best preserved ancient human remains ever recovered. Number 6. The Yukagir Mammoth. In 2002, in the remote Sakha Republic of northeastern Siberia, a local Yukagir tribe member discovered the partially exposed remains of a woolly mammoth protruding from the permafrost. Excavation revealed an adult male woolly mammoth that had died approximately 18,500 years ago. What made the Yukagir mammoth extraordinary was the condition of preservation. The head and one front leg were nearly intact, with skin, hair, muscle tissue, and even blood vessel structures preserved by the permafrost. Soft tissue specimens were examined under microscopes, providing scientists with their first detailed views of mammoth muscle fibers and circulatory anatomy. DNA extracted from the specimen has contributed to ongoing efforts to sequence the complete mammoth genome. In 2013, an even more complete specimen called Buttercup was discovered on Maliliakovsky Island, with liquid blood reportedly recovered from its body. These finds are central to active de-extinction research programs aiming to restore woolly mammoth-like animals to Arctic ecosystems through genetic engineering of Asian elephants. One frozen mammoth could be the genetic blueprint for a species' return. Number 5. The 2016 Siberian anthrax outbreak. In the summer of 2016, an unusually warm season in the Yamal Peninsula of northern Siberia caused unprecedented permafrost thaw across the Arctic tundra. Among the materials exposed, the carcass of a reindeer that had died of anthrax approximately 75 years earlier and been buried in the frozen soil. The thawed carcass released viable Bacillus anthracis spores into the local soil and water. At least 2,300 reindeer in the Yamal region died of anthrax in the resulting outbreak. 23 people were hospitalized. A 12-year-old indigenous Nenets boy died. The event marked the first confirmed re-emergence of anthrax in the region in over 75 years. Russian Arctic research institutes have warned for years that thawing permafrost could release a wide range of pathogens preserved in long-frozen animal carcasses and mass graves, including potentially viable smallpox virus from 19th-century Siberian epidemic burials. The 2016 outbreak became a real-world demonstration that ancient diseases preserved in ice can re-enter the modern biosphere. Number 4. Resurrected ancient viruses. In 2014, French and Russian researchers led by Jean-Michel Claverie successfully revived a giant DNA virus called pithovirus. Sibericum recovered from a 30,000-year-old layer of Siberian permafrost. The virus, once warmed in the laboratory and exposed to suitable amoeba host cells, began infecting them normally. The following year, the same research team revived a second species, named Mollivirus sibericum, also recovered from the same ancient permafrost layer. In 2023, the team announced the successful revival of multiple additional virus species from permafrost up to 48,500 years old, the oldest revived viruses ever documented. All currently revived ancient viruses target amoebae, not humans. But Claverie has publicly warned that the same preservation conditions could maintain mammalian viruses for tens of thousands of years, and that thawing permafrost driven by climate change creates a real and currently underappreciated pathogen risk. No mass-scale outbreak of an ancient virus has yet occurred in the human population. The science strongly suggests it is biologically possible. Number 3. Otzi the Iceman. In September 1991, two German hikers, Helmut and Erika Simon, traversing the Ötztal Alps on the Austrian-Italian border, noticed a brown shape protruding from a melting glacier at approximately 3,210 meters elevation. At first, they thought it was a recently deceased mountaineer. It was, in fact, a man who had died approximately 5,300 years ago. Otzi, as he came to be called, is the oldest naturally preserved European mummy ever recovered. His body was so intact that researchers have established detailed information about his life and death. He was between 45 and 46 years old at death. He stood about 160 centimeters tall. He had brown eyes and type O blood. He suffered from arthritis, gallstones, hardening of the arteries, and Lyme disease. His stomach contained the partial remains of his last meal, ibex meat, einkorn wheat, and toxic fern fronds, possibly used for medicinal purposes. He was murdered. An arrowhead embedded in his left shoulder severed a major artery. He also suffered a head injury consistent with a blow from behind. His copper axe, flint knife, longbow and arrows, and complete clothing of leather and grass were all preserved alongside the body. Otzi has been studied continuously for over 30 years. His genome has been fully sequenced. His ancestral relationship to modern Europeans has been mapped. He is now displayed in a carefully refrigerated chamber at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology in Bolzano, Italy. Number 2. The Dyatlov Pass evidence. In February 1959, a hiking expedition of 9 experienced Soviet ski tourists led by Igor Dyatlov died under extraordinary circumstances on the slopes of Kolotsiekal in the northern Ural Mountains. Their bodies and equipment were recovered from the snow and ice over the following months, but the case remained officially classified for decades. When recovery teams reached the campsite, they found the hikers' tent slashed open from the inside. The hikers had fled into below freezing weather without proper clothing. Some were barefoot. Their bodies were located up to 1.5 miles from the tent in 2 separate groups. Several victims showed massive internal injuries, crushed chest cavities, fractured skulls, broken ribs, but no corresponding external bruising. One victim was missing her tongue. Others showed traces of radioactivity on their clothing. The Soviet investigation concluded only that the deaths had been caused by a compelling natural force. Case files were sealed. A modern reinvestigation by Russian authorities finalized in 2020 concluded that a small slab avalanche likely caused the initial tent evacuation and the subsequent injuries. Many independent researchers consider the avalanche explanation insufficient to account for all the unusual evidence, including the radioactivity, the missing tongue, and the orange-colored skin reported on some bodies by recovery personnel. Each fresh thaw season in the Urals exposes new fragments of the original campsite. The frozen evidence has been examined repeatedly, but never definitively explained. And the #1 strangest thing found in glaciers. The single most important category of glacial discovery is also the simplest to describe: ice cores. Every glacier on Earth is a layered archive of atmospheric history, with each compressed annual layer preserving samples of the air, dust, pollen, volcanic ash, and microbial life of the year it was deposited. Within those layers, scientists have recovered direct physical samples of the air that ancient Romans breathed, the lead pollution from Carthage's smelting operations, volcanic ash from eruptions known only from indirect records, plague-era bacterial DNA fragments. In one particularly striking sequence of finds, ice cores have revealed dust storms in the Sahara that fertilized prehistoric Amazonian soils, methane spikes from Bronze Age agricultural expansion, the precise dates of dozens of volcanic eruptions across the past 100,000 years, and the exact atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration of every century back to nearly 1 million years ago. But beyond air, inside glaciers, researchers have found pre-human stone tools, well-preserved fish from extinct lake systems, complete carcasses of saber-toothed cats and dire wolves, organic matter from forests that grew before the last ice age, mummified Inca and Aleut human remains predating European contact, abandoned aircraft from the Second World War, lost climbers from any of the past 100 years, frozen samples of bacterial and viral life, fragments of meteorites preserved on the Antarctic blue ice fields. Every one of these artifacts comes from the same source: water that fell as snow somewhere in the deep past and stayed frozen. As climate warms and the world's cryosphere retreats, more of this archive will emerge each decade. We are now in a window of perhaps 50 to 200 years during which the planet's frozen libraries will be opened, read, and, if not preserved, lost again to the warming air. Everything in this countdown was found in just the past few decades of accelerating retreat. Whatever the strangest thing in the ice is, it has almost certainly not yet been pulled from the snow, but it is on its way. 10 discoveries, 10 frozen messages from deep time. The ice is melting faster than archaeologists, biologists, and climate scientists can catalog what is emerging. Much of what was preserved will be lost before it is understood. Whatever is still down there is on a countdown of its own.